Hey everybody, how you doing?
I think we went.
We have the after lunch. I get that, but hopefully we're gonna bring some energy here. Super excited to be here. I'll just quickly say my journey. Many of you maybe got thrust into community through the work you were doing. That was my case, and CMX was such an important resource, and it was helping me in my journey and us ultimately building the community. So really grateful to be back here supporting and being part of the education process and bringing these voices to life. Quickly, I'll just ask, who here feels like part of your job is advocating internally for community, selling it to internal stakeholders, getting buy-in? Just a show of hands. All right, that's what I imagined. It's a big part of this role, and this talk, this is for you. This is why we built it. The goal is to get some good information out as quickly as possible, but get to Q&A. We want to engage with you and hear your questions, because I think we all agree that's really something we look forward to and to be able to share collectively. There are QR codes on the tables, so you can scan and ask questions, but if you're in the back, you can have one of those, or when we get to the QA section, it'll be up here. So just know that if you want to scan it and have a question come up, and they'll project those up. So let's just get to it. I know, look, you can read the bios. I always think it's interesting. We have a little bit of time to hear more about who are we, who is each of us. So hopefully you're connecting with each other, but up here on stage. So the first question we're gonna do is we're gonna go down, and then we're gonna come back in the beginning. And the question going down is, why do you do the work you do? What lights you up? So just maybe a quick intro, and we'll learn about your communities as we come on back. Let's start with you.
Awesome. This is a pretty easy question for me to answer. I love working in the community space because I really feel like we're in a unique position to bring in the human faces and their stories behind the numbers and bring a deeper meaning to the work that we do every day.
Yeah. And then Jessica?
I think that people follow people, and with that comes brand advocacy and loyalty. And it was really important to me to find a role that was outside of just the transaction within business.
Yeah, the human side of it. And Aaron?
I have like a short story. I feel like I kind of fell into the community world, and I think a lot of people might echo that. I didn't have a career counselor tell me about community being an option. When I graduated from college, I had spent most of my undergrad in research, studying psychology. I thought I wanted to go to grad school to pursue a higher education degree. And I was like, I'm kind of burnt out. I don't want to do this. Got this job at Yelp, and then I really felt like community was sort of the manifestation of a lot of what I learned in psychology and learning about human connection, and I just felt really connected to it.
Awesome. And now we're going to come on back, and the question, I think this is the opportunity, what should everybody here know about your communities? How does it look? Is there anything unique about your community? Maybe some players or things that you deal with that are going to be relevant to the topic at hand. So how would you describe your community and how it applies to this conversation?
Yeah, the Peloton community is a very passionate community. Peloton's unique in that, and there's a lot more companies, and this community is like a big trend, and there's a lot more community-led companies. But when we filed for our IPO, well before my time there, we actually talked about community being part of our core business value proposition to our consumers and what we were offering. So what that means is community is super important, right? So community plays a large role in everything that we do in the service and what we offer, and we get that buy-in at the executive level down, which makes my job a lot easier in a lot of ways, but also puts a lot of visibility and importance on our active community. And so how does that look? Our community is very engaged and self-organized online across multiple social media networks. I'm assuming we have some Peloton members in the audience. They might be involved in a community. You might work out with each other. So very highly engaged community.
Yeah. Jessica, how would you describe your community?
So our communities are set up globally, and they're in our 3 key segments, so gaming, education, and small and medium businesses. And they're very unique segments, and our communities reflect that, because our customers may be one or both. They may be a student and a gamer, or an SMB and a student, or all 3. But really understanding who they are and why what we're doing matters to them, whether it's a product or a service. But it really makes me excited when I see how the community managers that I have connect in that space with the people who are our current and future state customers, as well as get them to connect with each other. And that might be gaming live streams. It might be hybrid in-person events around AI or different thematic topics, or it might just be we're hosting a trip to the Amazon for students, and they'll come back and they'll talk about it online too, and really inspire them to do good in the world and have a purpose. And so that gets me excited. That's really, I think we've got the unique opportunity to build out an entrepreneurship program while still attaching it to the KPIs and the ROI. But really, you know, why is it cool? Why is it fun to be a part? Why would you spend time with us when you have a million other things to do or places you might want to be? And that's really exciting to me to see how they connect with each other and the brand.
Yeah. And then Dusti, how about your community? How would you describe it? How's it set up?
So I sit on the marketing team at Thumbtack, but I have the really interesting opportunity to be able to work with almost every team across the company. Our community programs encompass an online community, a loyalty program, as well as a brand ambassador advisory board program. And it's been really amazing to see how all of these various aspects of community can help lift and amplify and enhance the work of all of our teams, while at the same time really creating a reciprocal relationship and a sense of shared future with our users as well.
Yeah. Awesome. So now let's get to the topic, which is this building of buy-in, the relationships, and spending a little bit of time talking about that in this topic and navigating and building effective these cross-organizational relationships, right? That both we're building these communities externally, but this internal work that we need to do. So let's start, Aaron, we'll have you answer. Spend a little bit of time talking about how do you build those relationships? How do you think about that in your work, or maybe give some context to it?
Yeah, I think it's super important to be able to articulate your community and the value that you bring to the organization, the work that you do. It doesn't necessarily need to be an elevator pitch, but just being able to succinctly and proudly, discuss and explain sort of like, this is what we do, this is why we do it. That evolves over time at businesses, so it can be easy to forget that. Like I talked about, community has a lot of buy-in at Peloton, but there might be new cross-functional partners I need to work with. I need to explain to them, what our role is as a function and what the community's role is in our business, and get that buy-in. The other thing is that, which I think is a big, really important, is to understand, your partners, what their goals are, what their objectives are, how they're measuring success, and really, think about what can you bring to the table. It doesn't need to be, what can you get from them, but because I think a lot of times with community, and I'm sure this is the case for a lot of you here, it's a symbiotic relationship where, you want to help them, it helps support your goals, and really being able to articulate that. And then the last thing I'll say, which I'm a really big proponent of, is celebrating your wins and reporting out on that. So whether that is maybe you run like an operation and you have productivity and sort of like ROI that you can report out on, like include your stakeholders in that. Maybe you're doing something that's more engagement based or one-off, like an event. Talk about the success of that event. Share that on people that may have not been, share those results with people who may not been involved in creating that or making it happen, and do that regularly, because I think that's how people really get exposure to your work and understand like what you're doing to champion community at your company, and gives them ideas on how you can work together and foster that relationship.
Yeah, and I always found too, it's so interesting that oftentimes our organizations aren't built, they're built to do something other than community, and we're in there doing community, so how do we help the organization understand the value, because it's not the thing oftentimes that the organization is built around. How about you, Dusti? What do you think about this
100%.
Building relationships and kind of fostering that internally?
I think Aaron touched on a lot of the same things that I would mention here, but I really try to do 3 main things. Bring cross-functional partners in often and early. Be open to their feedback, suggestions, ideas, and then be really plugged into planning across your organization. So like Aaron mentioned, you can really understand what other teams' goals are, what strategies they're working on, what they're working towards, so that you have a good understanding of how the programs that you run can help other teams meet those goals and then go and sell it to them. So that can be sharing, I share user testimonials in Slack every week. I share wins whenever possible. We do like a quarterly readout of our programs where we share, here's what we worked towards, here are all of the teams that we worked with, here are the goals that we helped those teams to accomplish. Just brag about yourself as much as possible, because like you've said, community is like, we don't have a handbook. It's not something that a lot of people do. It's not black and white. So really find where you're adding value and don't be afraid to just tell everyone about that value.
Yeah, it has me think about this just came to mind, but when we, my work is around organizational culture as well. So when we hit COVID, we were finding that leaders were communicating like 3 and 4 times as much, right? Everyone was into it and they're doing the videos. And the data said that that's the amount of communication that employees always want and that they were missing. And I think when you just said that, when we're selling something new or trying to sell a new idea, it's that what we think is we've communicated enough is probably a quarter of how much communication needs to happen. Jessica, anything you want to add to this piece around the relationship building?
I mean, I really think that Dusti and Aaron hit so many points, honestly. I'd say that, really think about who the key stakeholders are overall. And that means your customers, that means your community managers, if you're not a community manager, but who else you have, because they're your champions. But then also, if you are working with a tech product, which most of us are, or multiple API plugins, who's doing that work for you? I happen to be in a really privileged spot in community that I have, a back-end and front-end design team. We have external partners that we bring in to help us as well. We have our platform, and we have a UX design team, and CX design steps in as well. And so I feel really fortunate for that. And as we move more toward a community everywhere approach, the platform plus social, plus anywhere else, again, where people are following people, that's really what we're trying to build those relationships with those people, because to me, that's the full team. It's not just one person sitting on a stage or one person moderating or hosting the webinar series or celebrating. It's all the people that came together to make that happen. And so I try to put forward those awards as often as possible too, because it's hard work. I mean, I think especially if you have a brand-facing community, you're not customer service. So, we happen to sell a lot of hardware. If you didn't get your, whatever with your laptop, we're not the people you call. We're the people you want to talk to about things that are going on that you're interested in. Like you're a gamer, or you're not really sure, what kind of laptop you should buy as a student, or what is important to you with mental health as a student, that kind of thing. So that's really more that space, and it is harder to build relationships with people to understand why that's important. And I think that telling the story often, clearly, and celebrating the wins, I absolutely think that's the way to go. Yeah, for sure.
So Jessica, we'll stay with you as we turn to our next question, which is relationships are important. We all know the buy-in. But there is a tactical component, which is the budgets and the relationships, and how do we secure the funding especially now when resources are tight and multiple areas are competing for those resources. I always like to say that too, because I find in working with leadership teams, it's not always that people don't care. It's that we're competing for a select amount of budget, and how do we, in any one of our functions, do that? So let's just turn that question, and we'll just stay with you. Let's talk about that, securing budget and the buy-in.
I think Dusti touched on it really too before, is that as you are doing your quarterly readouts, we do quarterly business reviews, or as you are talking about what the metrics are that you are putting forward, ensuring that those line up to the greater strategy of either your division or the company at large, right? Like, what are they trying to achieve, and where do you plug into that messaging? Because the beauty of community is that it is more elastic and has the ability to fit into those places and kind of fill some of the gaps where other programs may be a little more rigid. I roll up to our CMO in worldwide e-commerce, and our leader of worldwide e-commerce is a huge proponent of community. So I feel very lucky to have him in my corner when it comes to some of this, but it doesn't mean I still don't have to internally sell to all the geo leaders and to all of the people who hold the budget strings. And so I really make sure, if it's voice of customer, if it is UGC, and how many pieces are we producing, and what is the quality of that? Not just how many, but like, what is it? And then also, where else can we plug in? Is it social selling? Is it in other areas of the business that matter? And then really communicating that story. And then does our strategy and what we're planning to do, so for those planned funds, how does it actually line up? And the third piece that is critical in community, it's critical anywhere. I've been working for a very long time, and I can say that you have to show the metrics of success. Your success metrics must be there. It doesn't mean every metric you have is successful, but it means the narrative around your metrics has to be something that is compelling. And I'll also say this, I'm a big fan of wowing. I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver. I know that's everyone, that's the goal. But I'm serious. I put that into practice, and I'd rather go into a meeting and wow someone with a new thing that we've tried or a new initiative that's really shown connectedness that maybe wasn't in the plan, so that it really it inspires someone to say, yes, I want to continue to invest in this. And when we get to the story portion later, I'll tell you, something. I'll give you a little story around that as well. But I would say those are the things that really matter when obtaining and keeping that budget. And I think too, honestly, if you're in a position, I mean, the economy is what it is. Markets are what they are. Verticals go through ebbs and flows. Again, the value of your community needs to match that. And if sometimes that means reducing your OpEx or reducing your spend, but getting more bang for your buck, you have to think about how to do that too. Just because you did it last year doesn't mean you're going to do it next year. So really think about what are the ways you can maybe take that line item and shift it around to be something that's more impactful.
Better, not bigger.
Love that.
Exactly. Also, again, just a reminder, if questions are coming up, if they're hitting on notes, please submit them. We're going to get to those questions. So just a reminder. Aaron, what do you think about when you think about securing budget and buy-in inside your organization?
I think Jessica did a great job articulating all of it, but I have some other comments to add. So one thing I like to do is, and this isn't like community specific, but just try to apply anything that you're doing when you're asking for budget to some sort of business framework. I'm a fan of the OGSM, which is like objective goals, strategy, measures, and just being able to articulate like, here's what we're doing, here's our goals, and here's the outcomes we're looking for. And then something else I really liked that Jessica said was depends to, I think you said the strings of who pulls the strings on the budget. That is, varies a lot company to company and org to org. You might be talking to a financial controller, you might be talking to your department head for budget or your boss, you might be talking to another organization cross-functionally. I have experience working in a customer experience division, and we got budget from marketing to do things we wanted. It was hard to, I didn't have the budget to do fun things, so like I would go to marketing and be like, hey, how do we partner together? And really being able to speak their language and just, put your objectives and goals and measurements into things that they can relate to and understand. And we talked a little bit before, I think Dusti, you mentioned inviting people for feedback. Like when you're building those plans, like build, maybe you have a friend on that team and say like, hey, does this look like something that would work for you or work for your department, or how would you adjust this, and really co-create so that you're not in the dark with it. And I think that cover. I think between what I said and what Jessica said, we've covered a lot.
And what I'm hearing also between the lines is almost our role. It goes back to what we said earlier. It's our job to control the narrative, right? If not, they're gonna dictate the narrative to us. So how are we prepared to go in and really, control this narrative in something they don't know that well, right? So how do we all own that? Is there anything you want to add before we get into our stories, Dusti?
I think you both covered it really well. Just drives home how really all of these topics are very interconnected, and I think the most important piece is actually building relationships that you can lean on for input, lean on to get budget where you don't have it, and really bringing cross-functional partners along with you on the journey. It gives them that sense of like ownership and buy-in and value add that they wouldn't have if they weren't part of it.
Yeah. I spent time at LinkedIn, and one of their values was relationships matter, clearly LinkedIn, but it always stuck with me. I mean, really, relationships matter, and that doesn't change through all the technology and everything else. The relationships matter. Okay, so before we get to questions, what we asked was everybody to think about a story that showcases some of your work, but also highlights what we're talking about. So we'll just go back down this way and start with you. Is there a story you can share with us that highlights this?
So many stories. I've been working on the community at Thumbtack for going on 7 years, but just this past year, I had the incredible opportunity of putting together Thumbtack's first ever pro advisory board, which is a board that is made up of users from across the country that represent different business sizes, from solopreneurs to large national companies, bringing them together to create this board where we can come to them for feedback and suggestions. And we brought them all together in San Francisco. They got to meet with our leadership team. But leading up to that point, I met with the sales team, marketing, product, design. Every single team almost across the org was involved in bringing this together, understanding what each team could leverage from something like this, and just getting buy-in from across the company. And the moment that we were all in the same room, all of our executive leadership team, all of these users from our platform in a room sharing stories with each other was probably the most fulfilling professional moment I've ever had. And then the feedback from both sides really showcased the power of bringing the humanity into the picture, because we all are focused obviously on metrics. We need to be, because we're businesses, but bringing in that element and really making it real and driving home, hey, there are real human beings on our side building this platform, and we recognize that there are real people out in the world whose lives this platform is impacting, and bringing that together was just incredible.
I mean, I'm also thinking of my experience, but this idea of, as much as we tried to sell it internally, when we got our leaders to experience somehow, some way, always spoke bigger, more volumes than us trying to sell it, because I think oftentimes community is an experience, and when people experience it,
Yes.
so I think with your story just had me think about that. How do we find ways to engage and get these partners together?
It really, sorry.
Oh, no, finish your thought.
It just really, it just gives different meaning to the work and different inspiration. I think it lights a fire under people when they get that experience.
Aw,
Definitely. Well, I've been with Lenovo now 4 years, and I came from the world of EdTech, and I ran a business for 13 years, and National Geographic was one of my bread and butter companies, and so it was a big shift to go to an 80,000 person tech company. And so I had an interview series, and I had 5 executives I had to interview with. And so I had made it to about the 3rd round, and I thought, okay, I think this is going pretty well. And I got on the call with the VP of North America, and he said to me, so I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't believe in community. I think this is the stupidest investment ever. And I need you to tell me why we should hire you to do this. I was like, whoa, well, this was going well. And he said, so why should I give you $1 to do this? And I don't know really what came over me. We joke about it now, but I don't know what came over me in that moment, other than to say, like, I did feel like the other interviews went well, and I was so kind of taken aback and also impressed with that kind of interview question. I said, you know what, you can keep your $1. I don't want it. I really don't want your $1. If you don't believe in this right now, you can keep it. And then you can hire me, and I'm going to show you why you should give me $100. And clearly, I hung up the phone, and I was like, well, I either got the job or I really didn't. And this is where I am now, right? And so, and I will say to you that same person who has now become a champion of communities and games on our gaming live stream feed, and really is interested in what we're building. And so anytime when someone says to you, back to the investment piece, this isn't worth it, maybe show them. Instead of just telling them, show them. And it can take time. And if you're privileged enough to have that time, take it. Show them. So anyway.
No, I love that story. It's a great reminder. Sometimes, just all keep your eye out. Sometimes the challengers really are saying, sell me. Tell me, versus, so they're letting you in. So before we shut down, I loved how you took that opportunity to make the case, and also I'll show you. So. And
he never balks at my investment asks now, and they're not $100.
Aaron, what about you?
So my example, I think probably I did 5 minutes of work, what I'm about to share, but I think it really showcases the importance and power behind these cross-functional connections with community. So we get asked to help cast members and members of our community and our brand shoots and our apparel shoots and our videos. We often feature real members in these campaigns. No, I'm not the final decider on that, but we do get to help input and voice, hey, we have some great candidates for this. So one of my colleagues and friends was just kind of stopped me and was like, hey, we have this campaign coming up. It was earlier this year. Do you have someone who would be a good fit? And so I shared a story of a member in our community. Her name's Shanta May, who would, throughout the past few years, would share her journey with us and how Peloton helped her overcome hardship. And her story is she was impacted by a neurological condition from the waist down, and recorded and really was used Peloton to help her regain mobility. And they showcased her in a recent brand campaign that we did, and it just won a Webby Award as of this week. And I did not do much work there, right? I just was advocating for my community and champions within our community. And that simple conversation led to, great business results. I did not not taking credit for any of the work that our creative and brand teams did, but I highly recommend checking out the video. It's a really cool video and something I'm really proud of.
Amplify others.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't have to go create fresh. Sometimes look around at the beautiful stuff that's happening, and how do we amplify that and not have to do all the work? It's there for us.
Yep.
We have about 5 minutes, and I said we're going to do questions, and I was just thinking about the way to do this. I think this would be a fun way to do it. We have some questions in front of us, so I'll let each of you look at this board for a minute, and I want each of you to pick one and answer it, and then if anyone wants to add, but for speed, when someone feels like they have one.
I've got one.
You got one? What's your question? Let's say it out
I
loud.
love the one about how would you explain your job to a 5-year-old? Fabulous question. I would say I help people find friends and talk about things that are interesting to them.
Any thoughts on that?
I love it.
It's
I'm
good.
going to steal that.
Let's do another one. You have?
I have one.
All right, what do we have?
So I like the, so how do you keep expectations manageable when facilitating asks to the community from cross-functional partners and vice versa? So the reason I like this question is because sometimes I think it can be easy to like sort of self-doubt, right? Of like, hey, I don't know if I can fulfill, or like just setting expectations here. But what I think is really important and something that has helped me in my career is you are the subject matter expert on what you do. And so you setting expectations is you being that subject matter expert in the room of what the results are likely going to be and the outcomes of that. And I think that isn't something that's on you or your fault, right? That's just sort of the reality, and you know that. And so maybe you can help as a part of that conversation, give recommendations on how to change that or change the approach. Maybe your recommendation is it's something you can do, but it's not something that you should expect, you know, a high yield in terms of results from.
Yeah, I've also found that people fundamentally want to be seen and heard, and that we can't do everything. But I think when people feel they're marginalized, pushed aside, versus I hear you, we've taken all this information and here's where we're focusing right now. But like, let's have that conversation. I think sometimes when we're overwhelmed, we push aside, and then that just keeps that resistance. So how do you listen to and be thoughtful? Why are you doing what you're doing? So you can communicate that back. Dusti, is there one that came to mind for you?
My eyes are not as good as these two, but there's one on tips on getting another team on board that is conservative when it comes to community and or is reluctant to embrace it as a real part of the company.
There we go. Okay, what are your thoughts?
I touched on this a little bit, and I think these two have as well, but seriously, you're the experts on community. You know your communities. You know that there is value there. Do not be afraid to shout it to anyone who will listen to you, and be really dialed in to what other teams are working on, and figure out where you can add value and be proactive about bringing that to those teams. So, for example, when we have a big product launch, I stay really attuned to our community, and I pay attention to what people are talking about, what the sentiment is, what their feedback is, and then I proactively share those relevant threads with our product teams. And over the last year, I've gotten like incredible feedback from designers and product managers around the kind of value that this type of qualitative feedback brings to the table. Our sales team will be looking for ideas for how they can pitch differently to our users, so we can go into the community and see how users are talking about our product and see where we can tweak things. So just really be confident, understand that what you do really is valuable, and then find ways to just tell everyone who will listen to you about
Communicate.
how
That's
valuable
like the theme.
is.
It keeps going. Communicate, communicate, communicate.
I have something to add. to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, please.
This is another thing that also applies to a lot of the conversations we had earlier. But I think if it makes sense for your company, and you probably know that if it does or doesn't, but if there's an opportunity to present a competitive analysis of like, hey, look at what our competitors are doing or what other people in the space as it relates to community, and that's something that grabs attention because a lot of times people are interested in that, right? They want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to edge out the competition, and I think that's something that's like simple but effective, especially for getting attention to the work that you do.
Well, we are in our last minute, so maybe we'll just quickly, any final thoughts? I know it's always interesting when you're on stage and you're listening. Hopefully there's been some good information that you've taken from this. And raise a hand, did you get something valuable from this conversation, something you can take back? It's always good to get that feedback. Any, let's just go down, just final thoughts on this topic.
This is something I could talk about all day long. So if you want to chat more about this, just come and grab me. Just keep doing what you're doing and find ways to sell it to cross-functional partners, because what we do truly is really valuable.
Relational.
Really important.
Yeah, we have to, it needs advocates like us.
Same, and I totally live in glass house because I definitely am terrible about answering LinkedIn messages. but you are welcome to email me. You will get a much better result or directly to my jmara@lenovo.com email address. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm just not one to answer all of the emails that are there. I'm not a great moderator of my own brand, so anyway.
Aaron, bring us home.
Yes, I'm an open book as well, so if you want to find me, feel free to come say hi. Happy to chat community. And Peloton, if you're a Peloton member, I like talking about Peloton as well.
Well, thank you all. It's been an honor
Thank
to work
you.
with you, and I've learned in our interactions, and it's so much to learn. Really appreciate this, and I hope, again, that you got something from it, and thank you to the amazing panel.
And if you wrote a question too and you want us to answer it, I mean, I think we would all be open to, you can send them along and we can answer some more of those for
sure.
you too. Because there were some really good questions on there, for sure.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.